So what we've established is that the competitive level of an externality being produced will not be optimal. And that is a problem. So what are some of the solutions to this problem? First set of solutions involves government intervention by way of a quota or a tax. Quota is a very simple idea. It's the idea that if you're dealing with a negative externality, the government can set the optimal level as the maximum level that is legally allowed to be produced, so that a company or an agent may not produce more than the optimal level. There's not much more to say about that. So that's the quota. The second solution is the Pigouvian taxation. The idea that we could ask the agent to pay a certain tax, let's call it TH, per unit of externality being produced, per unit of H being produced. So what is the problem for agent 1? The problem is simply to maximize his or her utility, and we can here disregard the numeraire for this purpose, as we've done before, less the cost of this tax, which is T times H, the number of units being produced. What will be the, and of course what we're looking for here is the level H to produce. Now the first order condition, assuming an interior solution, will simply be phi prime less th has to be equal to 0, and of course negative or equal to 0 if we allow for the possibility that h is equal to 0. Let's rule this out for now and consider only an interior solution. So we get to this condition here that the tax is equal to phi prime of h, assuming h is strictly positive. Now if we assume that the level of externality h here is equal to the optimal level, we can further say from the first order condition of the Pareto optimal problem that we would have phi prime for person 1 equal to negative phi prime 2 for person 2. And so if we plug that in, we get that the tax is equal to phi prime h. That's from our first order condition, but that's also equal to negative phi prime 2. And this is the level of tax which is such that the producer of the externality will produce a level that is optimal. So here the result is that the producer internalizes the externality which was being imposed on the other agent. Now if we're dealing with a negative externality, we have phi prime for person 2, which is negative, meaning that this tax here will be a positive number. But if we're dealing with a positive externality, phi prime for person 2 is actually positive, meaning that the tax is now negative. So you can think of this tax in this situation as a per unit subsidy. And so in this case, instead of taxing the externality, you can think of it as simply subsidizing a production of the positive externality. So the interesting result here is that I can achieve the exact same thing by giving the producer of the externality a subsidy to encourage the producer to produce below the competitive level H star. So I'm trying to encourage the producer to produce below H star, right? And I want to give the producer a subsidy, S of H, per unit H being produced below H star. And that subsidy, S of H, SH, sorry, can be set to be equal to the Pigouvian tax, which, as we've just seen, is simply the disutility of the externality 2 person 2 being evaluated at the optimal level. Okay, so what is the consumer 1's problem, the producer's problem? It is to maximize the utility of producing the externality level H plus this subsidy amount times the difference between H and the competitive level H star. And so this is simply equal all of this to this. Okay, just simply developing here. Okay, so what I can notice here is that this is simply the tax per unit H of externality being produced, and here this is some kind of a lump sum payment. So I can replicate the result of having simply a tax per unit produced if I combine this with a lump sum payment. So I can simply say that if I can rewrite that if I give the person a subsidy and then I force them to pay a lump sum payment, which is the tax times the competitive level, then this is simply equal to what we had before with the Pigouvian tax, the utility less a tax per unit produced. Running slightly out of space. Okay, tax per times the unit produced. Now, one final conclusion I'd like to make here is that this does require that the government have a lot of information here, including the marginal utility level here. So this is some kind of a practical limitation for Pigouvian tax or the subsidy solution.